Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday morning. Boy, this week has just absolutely flown by. Hope it's been a good week for you so far. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. Let me see. Do not forget, July 12th through 14th, 2018, Preterist Pilgrim Weekend, Ardmore, Oklahoma. Our theme is Back to the Basics. What are the fundamentals of understanding fulfilled eschatology? You don't want to miss it. Okay. We're looking at Paul's statement of 1 Corinthians chapter 15, 56, where Paul said that the resurrection would be when sin, the sting of death, would be overcome. You deal with sin, you've dealt with death. And we're looking at the comparison between Romans chapters 5 through 8. We've been focused on Romans chapter 8. We're going to take a little bit of a digression here in this video to reinforce this very, very point because it's so critical, okay? But anyway, what we're seeing is these direct parallels between Romans 5 to 8 and 1 Corinthians chapter 15. And this comparison demonstrates, beyond any shadow of a doubt, really, that Paul is absolutely not talking about biological life, biological death. He is talking about covenantal life, relational life, spiritual life, if you please. Spiritual life, spiritual death, spiritual resurrection. Now, let me drive home this point. I told you I was going to look at Luke chapter 20. In the age to come, they neither marry nor are given in marriage. I'm getting to that. Okay, just hang on. Oh, I've got a really special announcement on this. On Luke 20, no marrying, no giving in marriage. It's coming. It's coming real soon. Be watching for it. Anyway, what we have, once again, is Paul's statement in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, 56, that the resurrection would be, I know this sounds redundant, but please catch the power of this, when sin, the sting of death, would be overcome. Guess what he said in Romans chapter 6? I've already touched on this briefly, but I really have to drive this home. Resurrection, when sin, the sting of death, would be overcome. Romans chapter 6. I'm going to begin reading verse 4. We read it in the last video, but we've just got to see it again. You just got to catch the power of this. Therefore, we were buried with him by baptism into death, that like as Christ was raised up from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we also should walk in newness of life. For if we have been planted together in the likeness of his death, we shall also be in the likeness of his resurrection. Now watch this. Knowing this, that our old man is crucified with him, that the body of sin might be destroyed. Wait a minute. You deal with sin, you've dealt with death. And here Paul says to the Romans, when you were buried with Christ by baptism, you were raised to walk in newness of life, and you did that the old man, that the body of sin might be destroyed. And yet he's still looking for the finalization. If we have been planted together in the likeness of his death, we shall be in the likeness of his resurrection. What is all of that about? That the body of sin might be destroyed. Well, folks, let me reiterate this. It is abundantly clear, it is undeniably clear that Paul has not so much as discussed, even mentioned biological death. I mean, it's just not there. But notice how he continues his discussion of sin, death, resurrection. Knowing this, that Christ being raised from the dead dies no more, death has no more dominion over him, for, watch this, in that he died to sin once. in that he lives unto God. Now watch this. Watch this. Likewise, reckon ye also yourselves. See how Paul's driving this home? See how he's emphasizing it? Likewise, reckon ye also yourselves to be dead indeed to sin. Well, resurrection is when sin, the sting of death, would be overcome. And Paul says, reckon yourselves to be dead indeed to sin, but alive to God through Jesus Christ. And folks, remember, this is in the context where he says, you were crucified with Christ, you were buried with Christ, you were raised with Christ. Death, burial, resurrection. How can we divorce Paul's discussion of death, burial, resurrection, destroying the body of sin, from Paul's discussion of sin and death and resurrection and overcoming the sting of death, which is sin, in 1 Corinthians 15. And where in the world does Paul ever change horses? He doesn't. Once again, these are absolutely parallel texts. And boy, it absolutely definitively proves Paul's not talking about biological death, literal burial in the dirt, and biological bodies being raised out of the dirt. He's saying, reckon yourselves to be dead to sin and alive to God through Jesus Christ. They had begun that process by faith in Jesus Christ, buried with Him by baptism, raised to walk in a newness of life, anticipating the consummation at the parousia of Christ, which both Jesus and all of His apostles said was going to happen very, very soon. And yes, we do have more. In the meantime, contact me. And look, like I said, I've only, oops, wrong one. Yeah, here we are. Tony Denton's book, Inheritance Bequeathed, The Law of Deceased. Excellent little book. Contact me. Say, Don, I'd like a free copy. If you want to offer us a gift, that's wonderful. Because when all's said and done, it costs about $6. Every one of these we send to you free of charge. But if you can't afford it, that's fine. Contact us and say, Don, I'd love to have a copy of Tony Denton's book on the inheritance. Please send me a copy, free of charge, no obligation. But also, do not forget to get a copy of my book, The Resurrection of Daniel, chapter 12, verse 2, Fulfilled or Future. I want to tell you, folks, this is a storehouse and a warehouse and a treasure house of information on the resurrection. And it will blow your mind how clear the evidence is that the resurrection was in AD 70. Okay, thank you so much for joining me for this morning's morning musings, and we will see you on the flip side.